We have to wait anyway because our first agenda item is Rioc, and we're going to wait for Bryant to come. I'll just text him. So for everyone waiting, just it's a short agenda tonight. We have first the Rioc update. I know that Bryant Daniels from Rioc wants to come and tell us a couple of things. Secondly, if we have Brandon joining us later, an update from our wonderful library. And third, under community update, if we're joined by Rosanna to talk about the issue of poisoning on behalf of her and Amy. But so we have to wait for those. Oh, Brian's here now. Good. Let's give it a couple more minutes, then we're going to get going. Evening, Brian. So let's get going on this meeting. So welcome everyone. My name is Paul Crickler. I'm the chair of this Roosevelt Island Committee of Community Board 8, which covers a large part of the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island. So as I said just a couple of minutes ago, very short agenda today. I'm going to hand it straight over to Director of Communications at Rioc, to Bryant Daniels.
I'll just really quickly before
Oh yes, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that, don't I?
hand it
Yes,
over to Brent. No, it's okay.
thank you.
Just very quickly, guys. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us virtually. You will notice that you're currently muted, and everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except for Paul. And as we move through the agenda, Paul will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. If you're on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once Paul calls on you. The chat is available for technical support only, to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of anyone in the meeting. They will not see the chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you need to go to participants section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wait for the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Let's go to Bryant, please.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Brian Daniels, Communications Director for Rioc. Nice to see everyone here. Happy April. It's incredible that this year is going as fast as it is, but here we are in April, and that brings me to really, I'll keep it short and sweet this month. Cherry blossom season is upon us, as we all know, here on the island. So a couple of things I just wanted to point out. One is we did a meeting last week, or might have been 2 weeks ago at this point. No, I think it was last week. A community prep meeting, just sort of going over some of the preparations that Rioc makes this time of year. As we all know, with the cherry blossoms blooming, it usually leads to an uptick in visitorship to the island, which means that we have to adapt and be a little nimble in how we're doing things. So I will actually drop in the chat the link to the meeting, which was recorded. It was a great meeting. A lot of good information shared, a lot of good suggestions made by some members of the community. The big ticket items that we just want to go over high level is one is for the month of April, we will once again be running a shuttle, weekend shuttle to Manhattan from the island, specifically from the tram station. The shuttle runs from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. both Saturday and Sunday. It leaves the island at the top of the hour, and then it returns from Manhattan on the half hour. Last weekend was kind of a wash. We did not have a lot of riders, and I think this weekend it's going to be. It's looking like it's going to be rainy too, so probably not too much of a delay for you using the tram on the weekends. But we are offering this supplemental service throughout the month of April, and then we'll see how it's going into May and adjust accordingly. It is with the shorter bus, as we discussed at the community meeting. Taking a 40-footer off the island with all the construction work that's happening is a little different, a little difficult, as is the fact that it puts a lot of extra wear and tear on the 40-foot buses right when we kind of got the red bus feet back to where we wanted it on the island. So we are using the shorter bus, but generally speaking, the ridership has never exceeded what that bus can accommodate. So keep an eye out for it. We also have additional PSD personnel on weekends during the month of April in specific areas around the tram, keeping an eye on what's happening there, what's happening on the Manhattan side, the cherry blossoms as well. Additional waste baskets. Grounds is making more rounds because we have that added foot traffic on the island. So a lot going on, but we've managed it before, and we'll continue to manage it again. So that's kind of top of mind for us. We're keeping an eye on that. And with that, Paul, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone have any questions for Brian? So, folks, I was just chat. I just called Rosanna. There she is. She's just zoomed in. Thank you, Brian, very much for your time. Let's give Rosanna a chance to settle in. Unmute. Please unmute Rosanna. So it looks like we haven't got anything from the library today. We're going to go straight to community updates. Before I pass over to Rosanna, anybody else have anything they want to say for the benefit of the community? Any events and other such things?
Hi, good evening.
Hey, Rosanna, welcome, welcome. Anybody else quickly before we turn over to Rosanna? Going once, going twice, gone. Rosanna, thanks for joining, especially at short notice. I want to turn this over to you, please.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Just looking for an update for the community regarding the rat poison that continues to unfortunately kill more wildlife than rats, it seems. We do have a rat infestation, probably you are all aware of it, which is at the commercial dumpster across the F train, but that doesn't have anything to do with station baits placed around the buildings. So my hope, as for our last conversation on the subject at your meetings, Paul, was that Brian would probably reach out to the managements, the various related managements, and give us an update about it, because only these past 2 weeks alone, we have found about 5 dead squirrels of the nursery around the area of 405, 415, and 425 mostly. And right next also to Starbucks on the east-north side of Starbucks. So I was hoping that tonight Brian could give us an update of that, because there are several products, and I can mention some later on after hearing what Brian was able to accomplish with the related or the various managements of the Riverwalk area.
Thank you, Rosanna. Brian.
Is that it? Do we get
Yep,
it?
we're good.
Hi, everybody, again. So, I'll just touch on this again very quickly. So this goes back a few months when we first started getting some of these reports about the wildlife and dogs on the island having been exposed to different toxins. What we did initially was we paused REOC use of anything in our areas, and we're sort of reassessing ways that we can maybe use more organically friendly materials. I don't have anything to report on that yet, but it is something we're looking into. But the other thing we did was we did reach out to all the buildings on the island. We have periodic meetings with all the building management to reiterate to them the need to follow Department of Environmental Conservation guidelines when using these types of pesticides or herbicides. What we also did was we reached out to the DEC and we invited them onto the call so that they could go through these guidelines with the buildings as well. So that was back in a few months ago. Since then, we have seen some other use of bait stations on different properties, including some of the ones Rosanna just highlighted, that raised some flags for us And I would say 2 weeks ago, we actually reached out to building management at 405 about the placement of some of their stations that we didn't think were done properly. I have seen that they have removed some of them, which is good. But it's just one of those things that, we kind of have to stay on top of and continue to monitor. Again, though, if you feel that you see something that is awry, the DEC has suggested to us to relay to the community that you can file a complaint with them, and that they are the authority that that looks over this and sort of monitors all this. REOC can do what it does on its property, but the buildings are allowed to use whatever they want to use so long as they're following the guidelines. If they're not following the guidelines, like we just saw recently with a building, we will, if it's brought to our attention, we'll reach out. But you are empowered to reach out directly to the DEC as well if you feel like there's something alarming that you want to take a look at. So continued vigilance, that's kind of what we're doing. That's what we'll continue to do. And if anybody sees something, this last instance was somebody brought it to my attention, and so that makes it easier. So if you see something, and I know some people are a little sometimes hesitant to reach out to their own building management about these things, you can certainly bring it to our attention, and we can take a look at it too.
Hey, question for you, Brian, before I hand this over to Sharon. Do you happen to know how easy it is to file? Is it something you can do on 311 or?
It's I don't think it's hard, but
Rosanna knows.
it's you do it, I think, through the DEC. I don't know if you can do it through 311. Rosanna, I don't know if you know how to do it.
It's easier to do it through the DEC.
Yeah.
So the first step would be just calling DEC and reporting. Obviously, it will be helpful, let me put it in this way, to have like pics, so identifies the animals that have been found, so that the DEC officers already know what they're dealing with. But regardless, there is a report that can be filled out and is also online. And as Brian said, that is in fact very much correct, is DEC eventually responsible. But the buildings, I think that is important also for the community to know that the complaint to their management is not just a complaint. It should be a more detailed report about, for instance, the installation of some of the station buys that are placed in a wrong way, just to describe it very easily. In other words, they don't follow the regulations that are mandatory by New York City, and which are the labeling, the warning, and the various, depending on what kind of poison is used. But my suggestion would be my idea, let me call it, because suggestion, obviously I cannot suggest to REOC, because here mainly is not REOC areas that are affected by this high volume of base stations, in my opinion. So there are many other deterrents. This is important to REOC too, though, like ultrasonic deterrents that are not expensive at all and can be placed to avoid poison altogether, no matter what kind of poison, base station, whatever poison, and does not affect wildlife or pets, which is the main issue here. We don't want pets to be poisoned. We don't want wildlife to be poisoned. So there are many. The peppermint, we all know probably what can be used, but the highest rate is for ultrasonic deterrents, which again are like the size of a base station. I don't know if you are familiar with those things, but I have been researching just to give some idea and to avoid all these poisons spread throughout the island, and especially near nurseries, near schools. It's something, obviously, is like an accident waiting to happen, and we don't want that accident to happen. But it's already a big accident, again, in my opinion, and for what I do, to see wildlife dead, and they are not the target of those bait stations. So that's why I think that here there is a need of rethinking how to take care of that problem, because yes, is a problem, but can be addressed in different ways so that pets and wildlife are not targeted instead of rats.
So Rosanna, I've got a couple of things I'd like to talk about with you. Firstly is, if you could put down the details or just put links to that product or the products that you know about, I think it'd be very helpful if you sent that to Bryant and copy myself, please. I'd love to see it. And maybe Amy as well. The idea would be maybe, Bryant, if you have a look at yourself and see if it makes sense to you, but also if you, Bryant, could share it with the buildings as well, would be helpful. Does that sound okay, Bryant?
Yeah,
love to see it.
we're happy to take a look at any of those things. And I just want to piggyback very quickly on what Rosanna said. She made a very good point. When you do reach out to DEC, the more evidence you have makes it easier for them. So photos, videos. If there is a report of an animal that has been exposed to toxin and you have like a veterinary report saying that, share that with them as well. Those are important details that help them with the enforcement end.
So that leads directly into my, sorry, Rosanna, after you.
Sorry, I just meant to say, and also, if the inspection is required, like depending on the number of wildlife that are found, many times the inspections comes and, you know, they evaluate the scenes around, especially, unfortunately, I have to say that that area that we are referring to, 405, 415, 425 on the east and on the west side, has always been exposed to a very high volume of rat poison. And so that obviously degenerates with other sorts of killing, as we already said earlier during this meeting. And so I really think, and I will be forwarding to you, Paul, and to Bryant, you know, some ideas that I've been researching on. And one of them is, in fact, this ultrasonic deterrent that, again, is not very costly, is very discreet, the size pretty much of a bait station, but does not contain any poison, so it does not kill any other animals except for the rats, the targets.
That's a great idea. On the second point I wanted to make, Rosanna, this is addressed to you. So I would imagine if the more calls they get, the more contacts they get, the better, right? So how about you and I together come up with a flyer that could be electronic that we could share across all these email lists and our WhatsApp groups. If you would send to me an email, maybe, the phone number, the DC phone number, the link for the.
Yeah.
Also, then what do you think we need to include? So I can make an instruction thing for people, very straightforward instruction thing. You know, make sure you have a picture or a video. Make sure you talk about the placing that's right or wrong, or what animals it's hurting, or is it not labeled? All the things that you just mentioned before, which I'm forgetting some. You just do a data dump on me, and I'll get someone to help make a nice, easy, we can just flyer. That way, if we can get this around to hundreds or thousands of people on the island, and if 20 people call on the same day, because it's easy for them to look on their phone to do it, then we might get more action. I don't know. It seems like a good thing to do.
Yeah, it's very straightforward, and I have to say that they are very, very quick in listening. Obviously, no one would call with, for example, a squirrel run over by a car. Obviously, we are not going to call DC under those circumstances, which are sad but are not related to our issue. So as long as we have the area where the animal or the animals were found, the area, yeah, they need.
So you need to write down the list of everything you want, and I'll take care of making the flyer thing work. I'll get someone to design it for it.
We'll do that.
Lovely, nice one.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I kept Sharon waiting. Can we please unmute Sharon Pope Marshall?
Thank you, Paul. I have a question, two questions for you, Paul. and also for Brian, because I guess I'm a little bit confused by this conversation. My first question is, how do we know that the buildings are not following DEC? Is it DEC regulations? How do we know that they're not doing it? And my second question is, in following DEC regulations, is it possible that there could be some wildlife, some wildlife, you know, I don't know, some wildlife deaths, even though the buildings are following DEC regulations. But most importantly, if they're following DEC regulations, then this conversation becomes slightly different.
I'm going to ask Rosanna to answer the question, but the short answer, I think, is Rosanna has seen examples of things that do not follow DEC regulations, whether it's not the warning label, the placing of where the rat thing is. So I think the DEC also, I think it goes beyond that also. Yes, you want to make sure that the DEC regulations are being followed, but if they get 15 phone calls on one day because a bunch of squirrels are dead on Roosevelt
No,
Island.
wait a minute, wait, but Paul, I'm sorry.
Maybe I wasn't clear on what your question
I guess I want to make sure that there is clarity that they are not following regulations. You know, I understand the advocacy part of it is relatively simple, by the way, but I just want to ensure that that is the case. And Brian, because you have the best interaction with all of the buildings, I would be interested in knowing, you know, what your take is regarding that, because we do have a resident that is saying that these buildings are not following their not following DEC regulations.
Yeah, so let me touch on all of those topics very quickly. So we're not saying blanket all of the buildings on the island are not following DEC regulations. That's not correct. I think by and large, most of the buildings are following the DEC regulations. We have seen, because we've sort of familiarized ourselves with this issue over time, we have kind of understood what some of those regulations are. And so we can kind of see now if something's a little awry. For instance, if a building has a bait station the bait stations, I believe, are supposed to be closer to the actual building, sort of out of the way of the general public, and they're supposed to be anchored down into the ground, as in they cannot be moved. We have seen a couple of instances where they're next to the sidewalk and they're not anchored down. So that's pretty easy. We can see that, and then we can reach out to the building managers and stuff like that. I see. Going back to your other point, even if they are following the regulations, does that mean that there's a chance other wildlife can still get sick? The answer is yes. I mean, it's just the reality of using some of these things. If a bait station could be well anchored, it could be right next to the building, it could be in a discreet area, but you know, if a squirrel gets into it and pulls out something, that's, you know, that can happen. I mean, that's so the idea is to try to limit the potential for that, and certainly limit the exposure potential for pets and you know, humans, and that's kind of what we need to keep an eye on.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
I'd like Rosanna to feel free to comment as well, please. Hang on a sec, Rosanna. Put on mute. Yep.
Hi. Yes, what Brian said is in fact correct. So it's not obviously just, we mentioned squirrel, I mentioned squirrels, but it's not just squirrels that are targeted by this particular kind of rat control, so to speak. Because baby birds, for instance, this is the season of baby birds, baby anything, okay, they get to enter those base stations and can die. But even not doing so, the crumbs that are left around the area by the rats, because again, I don't know if everyone is familiar with those base stations, but those base stations are not like trapped where the rat gets inside, bites, and die, drop dead inside the bait station. Unfortunately not. They take the bait and they walk away, and the crumbs of that bait, it is around, spread it around the area where the bait station is placed. So now, in addition to what Brian correctly indicated, which is the anchorage and the vicinity to the building, there are also the labeling and the date of application. In addition to around public area, and especially schools, nursery, entrance halls, wherever dogs are walked by or children are at play, there must be a warning sign. And all those in regulations, at least the mandatory, I believe can be found, probably Brian can also help me with this, but I believe they can be found even online. There are booklets that are available, but for the ones who don't have those booklets, information can be found online. So yes, wildlife can be targeted by any kind of poison, obviously, and especially those base stations. But that's why I think that the first step should be, let's avoid the poison altogether, because eventually that poison gets into the ground anyway, and guess where it's going? So it gets into the water, it gets anywhere, and so it becomes even a different and higher challenging risk. So my suggestion would be to just have the island free of any poison, and to have instead eco-friendly deterrents for the mice. They work for rats, mice, whatever. Even they even work with roaches. So is for the statistics that I have been reading, they work pretty well. But unfortunately, as you all know, there is another factor behind all those base stations, which is the contracting and the economy that rotates around that business. But that is, I guess, a different subject that is not part of this conversation.
Thank you, Rosanna. Before I go to other people who want to speak, excuse me, Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot here. So if you wouldn't mind unmuting Jeff. Rosanna, I'm going to ask Jeff to work with you on producing this e-flyer, because he's the person who I was thinking of in my own mind, who did the last couple that we've had on the island. He's brilliant at doing this stuff. So Jeff, Rosanna, I'll put you two together electronically. If that's okay with you, Jeff, I hope you say yes.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually going to unmute or ask to be unmuted a little earlier to also volunteer to help
Wonderful.
out Rosanna
Thank you,
here.
Jeff. Why don't
I
you
have
take a
Rosanna
crack at
on the WhatsApp anyway, so I can reach out to her on there.
Nice
Good.
one. Thanks, Jeff. Why don't you take a crack first? Because you've heard this discussion, you've heard what Rosanna had to say. Take your first crack. Be great if you could take a crack first of what you think would be something people could have on their phones, then send it to Rosanna and she can add to it or make edits. How about that?
No, I'd rather get
Oh,
some highlights first from Rosanna, and then I can move forward with that.
that's fine. Whatever works for you. Thank you, Jeff.
All right.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna come,
no problem.
I'm going to come first to Jimmy, who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, and then come back to Sharon.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay, great. I don't have much to say, just a little thing I was observing. Rosanna, I know that this has come up in other meetings and I've seen Bryant address it. But I had a thought that maybe this is not necessarily a direct REOC issue, but could be also brought up with Hudson related, because the buildings you're describing are particularly located there. Am I right? Around 415 and, around the plaza there, the piazza around Starbucks. And this might have a direct correlation with the staffs of these buildings. And there may need to be a reach out from maybe David Kramer or someone on his staff to reach out to point out to the building staffs that, maybe there's a miscommunication about the poisons themselves, how they're being distributed, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not I'm not an authority on this, but just having listened to this numerous times, that's something that crossed my mind. I do agree with you that the poisons don't seem to do anything at all anyway, except kill everything but the rats. But that's my New Yorker observation, I'm sorry to say. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Jimmy. Sharon, please.
Yeah, I've seen rats around that area, and usually around construction sites, I think in general. But I do see this as a two-pronged approach, by the way. And from the way that I'm looking at this, I really would like to ensure that the buildings are following the regulations, because I think, because I have a visceral reaction every time I see one of them. I become this entirely different person, and I'm running down the street with my arms up in the air, screaming at the top of my lungs. So when you look at it from that perspective, I want the strongest poison out there possible. And you'll have to forgive me. I know that there are some people on the call that feel quite differently, and I'm extremely sympathetic to that. So with that in mind, it's important that the buildings at the very least follow DEC regulations. Now that's very problematic to me. And I want to ensure that we look at this not all together and put everything in the same boat, but that we first determine whether or not buildings or which buildings are following and adhering to those regulations.
Yeah, very quickly, I just want to point out one more time, when we did reach out most recently to the building, they did jump on it pretty quickly. So there is a level of responsiveness from the buildings that's pretty good.
Anna, do you have any way of getting in touch with David Kramer? Do you know him? I don't know him. Do you have contact for him?
Me? Yes.
Yeah. Oh, then you're good. Okay, good. Anybody else have anything on this subject? Anybody have anything else on any other subject? Sharon, do you want to call this to close?
Yes, please. A motion to adjourn.
I think it's a record for us, almost 35 minutes. Anyone else? Second? Todd? Jimmy? We're doing this formally, folks. Great. Have a great rest of your Monday evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, Brian.
No problem. See ya.
Thank you, Paul.